Once upon a time, in Soho, in the heart of London, there lived a young Canadian artist. One day, he had an idea. He would make a 90-minute animated feature film based on the art and folklore of the Middle East. Today, 14 years later, after spending £1.5 million, the animator still has 80 minutes of film to finish and £10 million to find. The animator is Richard Williams. The film is called The Thief Who Never Gave Up.
Started animation was that I saw what you could do with it. If you were Rembrandt today, you wouldn't be able to resist animation. Instead of doing etchings, he'd be making the stuff move. I would think. But it's a remarkable medium. You can do anything. You can change it, you see. And if you're playing a chorus, if you're improvising on an instrument, you have to do it then, that's it. But with this stuff, you can just keep fixing it. You can improvise, you can plan it, you have total flexibility with animation. It's just that nobody has really, outside of the early Disneys and a few interesting, short-lived excitement, there's never, well, who knows, I'm just making one picture, but one big picture with all the stuff I know packed in like a triple-decker sandwich. It's just jammed. The story is of a prophecy. They have these three ancient gold balls above an ancient minaret. And if the balls are ever taken away, the city will come to destruction and death. The thief, who is an idiot, steals the three golden balls. And the city is then saved, as the prophecy has decreed, by the simplest soul, which is this cobbler. And he destroys, or causes, unwittingly almost, the destruction of the giant death machine. So it's like a dream. The whole thing is in the language of a dream. I always did my personal work while I was doing commercial work to get the money to do my personal work. So instead of going out and buying a yacht or whatever, or getting drunk on it, I would go back to work and do my personal work, because that's the reason I'm doing it. I mean, I wouldn't choose to spend my life. I think I've made over 2,500 commercials, or worked on. Well, that wouldn't be my choice of a life career, or doing fancy wrappings for feature films, or making little shorts. I mean, naturally, you want to practice your craft. Well, the money comes from the commercial activities. When I was 5, I saw Snow White, and my mother was an illustrator, so I was a sophisticated little kid. I'd grown up in commercial art studios, and I knew that those were drawings, all done And I wanted to be an animator. I visited Disney's when I was 15, and they took me in and did stories about me. And then, when I was about 16, I went into a room full of Rembrandts. And I suddenly realized what all this art stuff was about. And so I scrapped animation. And I did cartoons for money occasionally, and I did quite a lot of illustration for money. And then I painted the rest of the time. But I couldn't stand the art world. I couldn't stand the idea of doing paintings for rich industrialists' wives and that whole art world. It was just repulsive as a way of life. I suddenly saw what animation could do. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to go into, oh, that's going to be horrible. I'll have to go in and be a commercial artist again. I don't want to do that. I mean, in order to get the money, to get the equipment, to get the knowledge, oh dear. I thought, I'll do that when I'm 40. And and I tried to stop. I spent 6 months trying not to do it. And then I realized, oh my gosh, you can put the sound with it, you know, and you can use music in that. Oh, Lord. And I just got more and more involved and started my first film, Little Island. Well, to make Little Island, I was doing tons of commercials. I starved for the first year I was here. It was a terrible shock to me, you see, because I was so successful in Canada. I just waltz in, I'd do ads, I'd do this thing. And when I said, well, I'm here, folks, and then they said, oh, do come here often, you know, or whatever it was. And I said, well, can I do some, you know, nobody gave me any work, which is a terrible shock. And finally, after about a year of living on peanut butter and fish and chips and milk, I started getting some work. Bob Godfrey helped me. He had a biographic films then, and I worked in the basement, and I did work in kind. I would do some commercial animation or commercial stills, drawings or something. And then he'd let me use the camera, so he did a barter system. Anyway, I made this silly little short, Love Me, which really was a Mickey take of the commercials I'd worked on. It was simple as hell, with a white background, and it was just silly. I did sort of cross between advertising, commercials, and Listen with Mother. And it was just for me. It was a private joke for me, and it didn't cost much to make.
Once upon a time, there lived a man named Squidgy Bod. Everything he did was wrong. Everything he touched either broke or fused or tore. His clothes were either too big or too small. But everybody loved him. When he went out, dogs would lick him. Horses would wave their tails at him. And little children would follow him.